The last thing I expected in a Superman show was to see Clark have a magical girl transformation. Yes, that is a thing now, apparently. It comes courtesy of the new Adult Swim cartoon, My Adventures with Superman, which gives the classic DC character a more anime-like aesthetic. Though whenever you hear a Western cartoon say it's inspired by anime, 9 times out of 10 that means they're just gonna pull from Sailor Moon. That's probably one critique I have of shows of this ilk in the West. They never really seem to take inspiration from anything besides that show and the occasional Kira reference. Like, guys, watch another anime, please! Going into the newest Superman cartoon in, a decade, had me ready to be disappointed. I talked about it before, but getting me to watch this show's first 2 episodes was like pulling teeth. I was not excited nor interested beyond thinking the art style was kinda pretty. Add on to that the continued gender erasure going on, and my hype could not have been any lower than it was, because it was at rock bottom. However, I'll admit, it wasn't all that bad. While it's odd seeing the characters look so anime-like, and written like they were ripped straight from something like Voltron or Legend of Korra,
calling me in today because I've got one heck of a story for you. Pew pew! No, don't do that to your boss.
there was a certain infectious charm about them. Clark trying to be normal, and his interactions with Lois were really adorable to watch, while Jimmy's theories about aliens and Mothmen was strangely endearing in a way, and I found myself really enjoying seeing what would happen next. Even if it's weird how quickly this show jumped into the romance aspect. Usually it's years before these two become interested in each other, the way this show was portraying them.
You like her.
No, what? I mean, I admire Miss Lane.
Do you think Clark's okay?
I mean, he's sick, so he's...
Maybe we can bring him some soup. I mean, what if he has a fever? We could drop off some blankets. Do you think he likes blankets?
You like him.
No! I mean, I like him.
Yeah, you do.
Think of how long it took Smallville to get around to Clark and Lois, or even the comic books. It was a veritable will they won't they spaghetti for decades. Now, it's not a bad change per se, it's just different and odd to see. Speaking of, one major change is Lois is an intern in this iteration. Normally, she's at least a couple years ahead of Clark in both age and experience at the Daily Planet. This helps give justification for her being full of herself, confident, and bossy. She's been at the game longer and knows the ropes. This version is barely more experienced than Clark, though we aren't aware of how long she's been an intern, but it seems likely that she's never published a story. In my opinion, I think this somewhat hurts the character a little bit, as it kind of makes her appear to be a bit of an asshole. She doesn't have much room to talk. But luckily the episodes do steer around that iceberg pretty well, seeing as she checks her behavior at the door by episode 2, and hopefully that won't be too much of a problem going forward. I still don't know if I like that she's on the same level as Clark and Jimmy, but we'll see how the writers tackle it and what stories they come up with. The other thing that I saw online is that some content creators were absolutely bewildered by how weak Superman was in these 2 episodes.
Why are you hurt? That was confusing for me. I had to keep watching because as far as I know, Superman doesn't get hurt unless it's with kryptonite, and those things aren't made of kryptonite.
He struggles with a robot, and later has a hard time with Leslie in episode 2. Isn't Superman supposed to be nigh invulnerable, except to kryptonite? Well, I think this is supposed to be a much more inexperienced Superman. He's not used to using his powers beyond saving cats from trees and inattentive mothers. I don't think he's reached his full potential, and I believe that was the case in the comics, or at least some of the more modern iterations. I think as the show continues, he'll get stronger. Plus, having him just KO everyone would be a little boring, right? Going back to what I said about Jimmy earlier, it's funny seeing people shoot his theories down as crazy. In this world, nothing spectacular has happened yet until Superman shows up. In a way, that vaguely reminds me of the New 52. When that reboot happened, Batman was still an urban legend, and no one knew that aliens and monsters existed. Then Clark comes along, and everything just spirals out of control. Maybe something similar will happen here. We are already seeing signs of the Suicide Squad, with a very young Slade showing up, so I'll be curious to see how this show brings in other DC characters. Are we going to see Batman? That'd be neat. I believe my biggest criticism about the show is that sometimes the way characters are voiced feels very unlike them. I don't know how to explain it besides showing this clip here of Lois rapidly speaking.
Oop. I mean, what if he has a fever? We could drop off some blankets. Do you think he likes blankets?
She feels like a Legend of Korra or New Rock character as opposed to Lois Lane, which clashes with the moment she actually does sound like Lois in other parts of the episodes.
A man flew down from the sky and risked his life to save us. Not for a reward or fame, but just because we needed help. Don't you want to know who that person is?
Maybe it's the fact that she's been de-aged and this is her at her most inexperienced. Fine. It's probably just me being an old dude and modern writing has left me behind. Okay, let's talk about the designs next. I'm okay with Clark's look, it's fine, but I'm still a little bit iffy on Tomboy Lois. It's a drastic change for the character, in my opinion, given she looks kind of like this in most of the stories. I found myself both disliking it and liking it. On the one hand, I do like tomboys, but I don't know if it's a good look for Lois. People have compared her to Luz from Owl House, and I totally see it. But I think the worst design was Leslie's. Oh my god, what did they do to her? I didn't think they could have given her a worse design than DC Superhero Girls or the Batgirl comic, but they topped it. I mean, is that a fucking mullet? I mean, at least it's not that overused side shave these cartoon animators love to give to women, but really? This isn't much better. How did we go from this classic, timeless design to this? At least she was a fun character in the episode, but goddamn. I can only hope she somehow acquires blue skin in a future episode or something. Also, for a show about Superman, you'd think the action would be amazing, but it's kind of underwhelming when it does happen. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not an animator, so take this with a grain of salt, but it just doesn't feel like there's much weight to it. If they're going to be inspired by anime, the least they could do was pull from Dragon Ball Z. Its action scenes were always fantastic. Even older DC cartoons had cooler fights, so what gives? Early show jitters? I pray they really do some crazy shit in future episodes. I mean, I'm not saying the animation in general was bad. It was good for the most part. The non-action-y parts looked really great. I just was not feeling the action scenes. Overall, better than I was expecting from DC and the lady who worked on She-Ra. I guess miracles can still happen. Thanks for watching. Become a member or I'll sick Task Force X on you. Take care.